and of course your brevity was very helpful there in that respect, Chairman. And normally, of course, one would expect to hear the officer present the report, but clearly you're doing all of that now. So I suppose that's the way things are going to be from here on in. Just to, there's a couple of questions I've got, but as you say, Chairman, by your guidance, I'll mix them in with comments as well. So what we don't know from this report is we don't know how much the additional revenue the council intends to collect from the seafront car parks and the leisure car parks. So the idea that this is somehow a neutral scheme for the seafront car parks is actually not true, is it, Chairman? Because what's actually happening here is that the extension of, I think it's 3-hour extension, 2 hours in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, I think that's what's being proposed here, to the existing seafront car parks means that those people who currently don't pay will have to pay. Those people won't see this as a cut in their car parking charges. They'll see it as an increase in their car parking charges. So that's the seafront car parks. Then we've got the long stay car parks. Well, the long stay car parks, now this very much is upfront an increase. This is just a plain increase of 10.6% if you park long stay car park. Well, that means long stay anything more than an hour, apparently. Now, long stay car parks, Chairman, they're used by people who work in the town centre. They're not the highest paid people. They work in our shops and they work in businesses in the town centre. And you're whacking them with a 10.6% tax increase on their parking charges. I'm sure they're going to ring you up and thank you for that and say thank you very much for your little leaflet which said in the election just a month ago that we were going to cut car parking charges, and then they suddenly find that they've gone up by 10.6%. They'll see themselves that this is a smokescreen. They'll look at you, Chairman, and they'll say this is the guy who you meet in the pub who says lend me a £5 and I'll buy you a drink. This is an absolute outrage. You've also got, Chairman, would you believe, 378 existing spaces within the town centre that are free for 1 hour. They already exist, they're already there. And that, if they rotate them an hour over the period, that's 3,024 spaces over an 8-hour period. So there's already sufficient car parking spaces within the town centre for people to park for 1 hour. Not much use for traders 1 hour, Chairman, and for the second hour, in your short stay car parks, instead of 40p, the second hour is going to cost £1. So actually, in reality, your second hour, instead of costing you 40 pence, is going to cost you 150% more. A 150% increase in the second hour of car parking. So what we have here, Chairman, is we have a smoke and mirrors strategy. We have a completely unnecessary scheme to supposedly give people an hour's free car parking, when in fact they already have an hour's free car parking as an excuse to be able to raise taxes on everybody else. I happen to think, Chairman, that is a dishonest way of going about things. I don't think it's an honest policy at all. It isn't bringing in free car parking, it's bringing in parking increases for most people. And I have to say, Chairman, really, again, a very poorly thought through scheme. We don't know how much it's going to cost to administer. We don't even know, Chairman, how it's going to be administered. If somebody turns up in a car park, a short stay car park now, they will pay and get a ticket, and the ticket goes in their window and it tells the enforcement officer when they've arrived. If they don't have to buy a ticket for the first hour, do we have any idea, Chairman, as to how people are going to, the enforcement officers are going to know when those cars arrived? How much extra is it going to cost to send enforcement officers and staff down to our seafront car parks 2 hours earlier and 1 hour later every day? How much is it going to cost to bring in a scheme which actually works out when people arrive in the car park in order to be able to ascertain when their 150% increase starts? This policy is absolutely crazy, and it's not thought through, and it's designed, I'm afraid, to swindle people. It's a con.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you wish to speak as well?
Yeah, I'll speak up in
I was very interested in the way you so blithely dismissed the free car parking access at the beginning and start of the day in the seafront and Albert Park. I've probably had more emails on this one subject, which was only published in the public domain on Friday afternoon, than almost anything in the last 6 or 7 years. If you'll just indulge me, I'll briefly read the core parts of a very typical letter that a resident sent to me.
They've all been very similar emails, almost as if one person wrote them. You've had the same.
Have you? Well, I've not seen yours, but I'll show you mine. And I've had many different ones from clearly many different people. But I am deeply concerned and unhappy about the proposal to extend parking charges from Seafront and Albert Valley car parks beyond the current hours. The current charging regime recognises the benefits to local residents of access to these spaces out of hours for exercise, including dog walking, running, swimming and walking. And it finds a balance between allowing inclusive access to these elements and the opportunity to charge for daytime and tourism use. The extension of hours does nothing to support economic growth, but it does significantly adversely affect residents in terms of health and well-being, particularly at times of significant pressure related to the cost of living. We all know how challenged Gosport is in terms of health and well-being. We have some of the worst obesity rates in the whole of England, and anything that discourages people from doing park walks or park run really should be deprecated. I'm also, frankly, simply not convinced that the very admirable intent to support and stimulate high street shopping activity will be affected one jot by this mirage of a reduction for an hour. As well as the available public parking spaces, people regularly will briefly run down for an hour or less and use the Morrisons or the Halfords car park, all of which allow people to park there for a brief time, or the Waitrose one up there. I don't think this is going to attract many people for the bare hour, and then we slip into that 150% increase for those who want to be there longer. I just really don't understand where you're coming from, and certainly it's not where the residents who've contacted me want this council to go.
Councillor Burgess.
Thank you, Chairman. As one of the three councillors here who was in this chamber when car park was introduced, one of the things that was taken into effect was the fact of how do we cater for dog walkers. Now, we cater for dog walkers by saying certain car parks wouldn't start charging until 10 o'clock in the morning, and then they would finish the charge at 6 in the evening. That gave people who had animals and one thing or another time to go and walk. In addition to that, in the last few years, we've got one of the most successful park runs on the south coast. You are now going to charge those park runners who do it for fitness and well-being, you're going to charge them to do it, whereas before we weren't. You've gone completely against what the car parking strategy initially was about, which was, yes, having car parking charges, but taking account of local residents and their ability to walk their animals, to have their, shall I say, the fitness, where we've installed fitness equipment and one thing or another, and you've taken that away from them. Now you're charging them for that. Robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Thank you. Any other contributions? No, if I may sum up then, and then we'll put it to the vote. Robbing Peter to pay Paul.
It should be Robbing Paul to pay Peter, shouldn't it?
Well, maybe it
Should accept Peter's way to earn it, but if you're going to have a good line, rehearse it first rather than remember it afterwards when prompted. What a load of nonsense. We really don't need any lectures from the Conservative Party on car parking. You introduced the charges.
Correct. You then going to get rid of them.
And we got rid of them, and you then walked out in a pit of pique that night and resigned all the chairs, and we took over. And then you came back and you properly reintroduced the charges. One of the most unpopular policies you've ever done in this town. Gosport Town Centre has been struggling for years under your administration. Many town centres are struggling, I accept that. But one thing we had going for us, against all the other town centres, was free car parking. And you took it away, and we have had repeated requests from traders and businesses to bring it back. And that is what we are doing.
We promised it, we're delivering on our promises. Ideally, I would scrap all parking charges, but I remind you again, you have left Gosport with a £1.4 million a year budget deficit through your own financial incompetence, and we are having to address that. So we can't do it all at once, and we have to pay for the policies we are bringing in. And that is why long stay in the town centre only is going up by a modest amount. Now, turning to the seafront ones, and I'd say just in addition, when Councillor Philpott, you really should read the report before making false comments, but there is no increase to the maximum stay in short stay. It will remain £1, the same as it is, it will remain the same in future. How will we manage it? Well, if you travel just up the road to Wickham, for instance, they already have 30 minutes free parking. The way you do it, you press a button on the machine, just as if you were ordering a normal ticket, and a little free ticket comes out. So it's not beyond the wit and wisdom of man and woman to actually do a scheme that enables you to display a free ticket in your window. The prices here that we're talking about for the seafront car parks, bringing them into line, really on the park walks. We have a council who goes on the park runs. She goes to them at the seafront, she goes to them at Queen Elizabeth Country Park. You go to Queen Elizabeth Country Park, as you know, Councillor Burgess, as I do, is a county council-run park, and the people going on the park run have to pay the Conservative County Council's parking charges. So you are arguing that they shouldn't here when they do there. I simply do not agree that someone who goes on a park run and can afford to drive to the park run from wherever they're coming from cannot afford to pay £1 towards the maintenance of our car parks. They expect them to be properly maintained. We've got an item later on tonight where you spend £20,000 without any board approval on speed humps in the car park. That money has to be found. Now, if those on Leon Solent don't wish to pay that money on a park run, there's a simple solution, and that is your county council spaces on the road where you've just introduced parking meters, but they don't start to 10 o'clock. So park there if they don't wish to park in our car parks. Simple solution, easily done. Might cost the borough revenue, they don't welcome that, but it will add to the county spaces being full before 10 o'clock. In terms of dog walkers and joggers, yes, at the moment someone can walk along the seafront at 9 and not pay a parking charge. They'll be able to do that 7, 6, 5, 4 in the morning when it will still be free. Most people actually walk their dogs or jog or go down to the cafes later in the day and happily pay, or maybe not happily, but they do pay the charges that your party introduced and have consistently put up since they first did so. So why should a dog walker at 9 o'clock not pay when a dog walker at 10:30 does pay? And the same for a jogger or a park walker. The charges are not excessive. I parked my car last week in Southampton railway station for 4 days, £77. So I can't believe people here can't pay £1 for a short trip. And we have to pay for those car park meters. We have to sort your budget deficit. We have to pay for all the services. And so we are going to be financially prudent, and every improvement we introduce, we will, as you were asked us to do on the previous item, say how we are paying for it. And that is precisely what we are doing here. I think those charges are reasonable, and it's important that we do actually bring things in line, surprised you never did before, and also bring in free short stay parking. We will again, as with everything, monitor it as we go. If it doesn't work, we'll change it. We'll adjust the charges as need be. There's 1 or 2 car parks, I think of Hardway for instance, the slipway there, where it actually costs our officers more to go down and check whether the cars have paid or not paid, and we actually get in the revenue. And there may be a case there, we're looking at saying it would actually save the borough money not to have any charges at all, particularly as there's great parking on-street problems near the Sailing Club down at Hardway. So that kind of issue we will look at again, and we're happy to keep this totally under review, but as with other things, we're going to keep our manifesto promises, which I would remind you again we've just won an election on, and you have lost, and we're going to give people in the town centre the hope that we can help them increase trade. We have other proposals coming forward on that. I'm meeting town centre businessmen later this week. I've already spoken to a number of them, mentioned we were doing this. Absolutely 100% without objection, welcoming the fact that we're doing something to bring life and trade back in our decaying town centre. So I have no problem whatsoever in recommending these. If you want to propose an amendment, please do, otherwise I'll take them on block And if you wish to vote against the return of free short stay parking in the town centre, it is again your priority to do so, prerogative. On that motion, I'll put recommendations 1 to 5 to the vote. Those in favour, please show.
Chairman, so could a clarification, this is going back to full council, this is part 1, is that correct?
Yes, correct. We have to advertise the parking orders, so it has to go to full council.
Correct.
Fees and charges, sorry. Those in favour, please show. Those against? 2. You abstaining, Councillor Randall? Okay. Splitting your group, maybe? But,
All democracy, so what do you recognise?
splitting your group, you're welcome. We know your group. Item 8 is levelling up procurement. I will ask, I don't know if Gary wishes to introduce this or say anything on it. Or Debbie, if someone wishes to. Who would does anyone wish to comment on it?
Don't have anything to add to the report, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Councillor Burgess.
Thank you. In the report 211, it states that President of the Board provide delegated authority to the Assistant Chief Exec and Head of Procurement in consultation with the Borough Solicitor and the Chairman of the P&O Board. Will the other leaders be involved at all in this?
No. You never involved us, so we won't involve you. Any more questions?
Well, in that case, I'll put an amendment to the recommendation on item 8.
Have you got it in writing? Give me that. 30 seconds to read it. I think the key bit is that you added leaders of the opposition group. The rest is the same. Anyone else wish to ask questions or speakers? No? Sorry, Councillor.
I'll make a comment. I absolutely understand the time pressure on this. I'm delighted that the government saw sense and has put extra money to support smaller councils like yourself to deliver these things, and I'm strongly behind the process of getting the best possible levelling up from the bit that we can do. Not directly related to this paper, which is simply to give authority to quickly allow those granted monies to be used for the purpose that they're given, without having to come keeping back the laws, and I support that. But as with my leader, I'd like sight of some of those things, because the sums are not small. They could be up to £80,000 potentially, unlikely. But with respect to the Levelling Up Fund bid itself, at some point it would be very helpful if we could all have sight of that, because it's something that's going to be good for this town. And I think we can all make positive comment and constructive criticism of it, if it's done in a timely manner.
Thank you. If I may respond to that, I'm completely happy with that point. It would be good to go ahead united as far as possible, rather than your side just opposing for opposition's sake. So there is a very tight time scale. This is really linked in with something that's already happened. When your party was still in control under Levelling Up One, I think you bid for 14 million, something like that, got zero, nothing, not a penny. Portsmouth Lib Dem control got 20 million. This time we want a fair slice of the cake from government, which we didn't get from your government under Levelling Up Part 1. The timescales are extremely tight. Thank you, government, for that. They always say here's a pile of money, we're going to make it as hard as possible for councils like ours to get it. Hence the appointment of consultants, and hence this report. I've met the consultants already, as has Councillor Highlands. Had a good discussion. They had a long list of schemes, some of which in my view are pie in the sky. One or two are much more relevant, and we want them now to work them up in a very, very short time scale. One in particular, for the Rum Store, which I didn't even know we had a Rum Store, but we have, linked in with the heritage, which we're keen to protect, as we'll see later. But I have no problem at all with the scheme when it's all prepared, coming back. So not necessarily a board, because the timescales are too tight, but the members are aware, maybe through a members' information bulletin, of what the bid is and what we're trying to do. And let's hope this time that the new administration gets funds from the government that the old administration didn't, because Gosport desperately needs inward investment. And when the government talk of levelling out, it's about time they level up for Gosport, because we've had precious little problem so far.
Yes.
Bill.
I welcome all of that, actually. I really do feel that we were one of the 30% of level 1 or tier 1 boroughs that didn't get money. So we weren't on our own, and I think it was down to the inability